Hi everyone, welcome to this lecture on family systems therapy. So while before we were really focused on looking at the individual and how they might grow and develop autonomy, we're no longer going to be thinking about individuals. We want to assess individuals by looking at their entire family, the whole family unit, which is referred to as a system. And we're going to look at the different ways in which family members interact to create the issues or the dysfunction or whatever's coming up for them that's brought them to see you. And symptoms, so the stuff that's going on with the clients, what brought them to see you, is seen as a family issue rather than an individual issue. And so the whole family is the client. And there's a real emphasis on looking at the different ways that intergenerational behaviors and ideas influence the way that people are functioning and the type of behavior that they're engaging in now. And one of the family therapists, you've seen this guy before, is Adler. And Adler was, obviously very positive and strength-based. He collaborated with the family. He joined with them, and he worked with parents to think about, why might their children be misbehaving? What might be the function of that behavior? And that's really one of the first times that that question has been asked within psychology. But really, when I think about family therapy, I think about Murray Bowen, his multi-generational family therapy approach. The family is one emotional unit, and anything that's coming up, is really about stuff that needs to be resolved within the family. And early on, there was an emphasis put on this idea of differentiation of self. And so you probably have seen some families like this maybe in your own life where the family members are so close to one another that it's causing suffering. So not like a healthy interdependence, because this could also be misconstrued through a multicultural lens, collectivist versus an individualistic orientation. But really just, is this individual within the family allowed to have a full self? And another big idea from Bowen is this idea of triangulation. And so what happens is, there's some kind of issue in the family, and to resolve the anxiety or whatever comes up, another person gets pulled in or another person inserts themselves. Let me give you two examples of how this might occur in practice. So first, you might have, let's say, a mom and a grandmom and a child, and they all live in the same house. And the mom and the grandmother, they start fighting with each other. And this is an ongoing issue. And to change the situation, the child goes over and hits their brother. Not only does this stop the conflict between the grandmother and the mother, it redirects the attention towards the child. So that's one way that a triangulation can occur. Another example might be two parents with a child where one of the parents is overly confiding information in their child and creating a triangulation by putting the child in the middle of that relationship with that, for that couple. And so we're going to look at these individuals within the context of their family. One of my favorite family therapists, Ken Hardy, doesn't look like Corey talked about him in this chapter, but I bring up this example because it comes from his work. He talked a lot about how he worked with children and, for a long period of time, let's say 6 months in a residential home, the child be doing really well, they'd go home for a weekend visit with their parents, and all the work that had been accomplished within the therapeutic relationship would be gone. And so, here we see that if we don't treat the whole family, uh, that it's going to be really hard for the individual members' behavior to change. And there are two real big approaches within family therapy: the structural family therapy approach, Salvador Minuchin, and he really saw this as a lack of hierarchy within the family system. So the role of parent might not be clear, and maybe the child is also in the parent role at times, and he would work to restructure the family system to address, you know, to re-establish hierarchies within the family. And it's a very active and directive approach. And so you're going to look at maintaining appropriate boundaries. What are the family rules, spoken and unspoken about, what's okay, what are appropriate ways to relate to one another, appropriate relational boundaries. You often find in families where there are addicted where the family is addicted. So let's say mom is an alcoholic. You might see some very rigid boundaries. So everybody in the family doesn't talk to each other about the issue because there's an unspoken norm that, you don't talk about those things. There's a real rigid boundary there. Or maybe I have often seen this with a child where two parents are divorcing. The one parent becomes sort of overly emotionally involved with the child, and so a structural family therapist would work to reestablish appropriate boundaries and hierarchies. And along with the structural approach is the strategic family approach. This is actually kind of a famous approach for us here in Philly, developed by Jay Haley, one of the contributors at the Philadelphia Child Guidance Center. And this really looks at how the family interacts to support, sort of the problematic behavior, if you will. So, excuse me, sorry. So if, let's say, two parents are constantly fighting, how does that type of relational experience for the child contribute to them engaging in drugs and alcohol? And when I'm looking at that, I'm going to use a genogram perhaps, and I'm going to look at the different ways that kind of behavior might be looked at through an intergenerational lens as well. Strategic family therapy is pretty popular. A lot of wraparound services use it because it is brief, usually 12 sessions, process and solution focused. Not a lot of depth. We're looking to just address the issues. And so goals are very behavioral in nature. You're looking to change the way that people are relating to one another, and hopefully moving the family towards a more appropriate stage of development. Thinking about current times, that has gotten a little difficult and maybe even a little more redefined as many of us have to move home, after college or, right after graduating, because we're just the wealth disparity in this country has made it hard for folks to get a good job and be able to move out traditionally. And so, intergenerational homes are becoming the norm, and that's really changing the way in which the family organizes itself. So, for example, in an intergenerational home, what do you do when you have the grandparents who want to parent differently than their children, with their children? Those are some issues that a strategic family therapist might work with. And, there really has always been this emphasis in family therapy. I think more so now than ever around using a social justice lens, a postmodern approach. but it's always had a very non, you know, not leaning towards pathology, strength-based, addressing issues and seeing them as part of a family dynamic. And so in that way, if you change the family dynamic, you can support the individual, and very strength-based in that way. And family therapy is really very uh, culturally inclusive. You know, we all have to deal with our family and the effect of our family on our individual and group development. And I can't think of a therapy session that doesn't in some way include a discussion of the family system. One thing to just keep in mind about this approach, because we're thinking about systems here, what are cultural norms and how do they shape our idea of differentiation? For women and for many collectivist cultures, having an interconnected, uh, relational connection is considered healthy and is healthy. But there's the chance that if you're leaning and looking through a lens that overvalues autonomy, that you could unnecessarily mess with some of the family structure. And as you can see here, they say that, what can happen is you focus primarily on the nuclear family, which is really based in a Western notion. And again, as I had said here, it's really an empowered approach because there is no bad person. It's a family system that's dysfunctional. And so we're going to look at different ways that we can be more purposeful in the family dynamics, the ways that people communicate with one another, and the ways that the family relates to each other. And that's our brief overview of family systems approach.